What if the biggest secrets out there aren't just ideas, but actual things? Technologies so powerful they completely rewrite the rules of what we think is possible, developed in the shadows and hidden right out in the open. Well, today we're cracking open the file on one of those technologies. We're going to trace the hidden scientific lineage of the orb engine. And this story, it doesn't start with spaceships. It starts with the raw, brute force of early atomic science. So let's just start with the question that hangs over this entire story. What if the key to this incredible propulsion system wasn't some grand design? What if it was a complete and total accident? A miracle of physics that just appeared in a lab, was studied for a little while, and then was deliberately swept under the rug, only to pop up decades later as a weapon. To even begin to understand the power of this engine, you have to start with the man who first unleashed its core principle. This guy right here, Dr. James L. Tuck, a brilliant and frankly audacious weapons scientist who came to Los Alamos with this massive vision. He really is the founding father of this entire thing. I mean, just look at how fast this guy moved. It's insane. He starts his fusion research in 46. By 49, he gets a call from Edward Teller himself to come to Los Alamos. Tuck was absolutely obsessed with taming fusion, and just 8 years later, in 1957, he does something that changes everything. He uses his Scylla theta pinch machine to create the very first controlled thermonuclear reaction in history. And I'm not talking about on paper. This was real, harnessed fusion happening in a lab. So, what was his secret? Well, his whole philosophy was beautiful because it was so simple and so brutal. While everyone else was trying to gently contain plasma for, long periods of time, Tuck's idea was the pinch. He basically said, forget all that delicate stuff, let's just use overwhelming force. Let's squeeze the plasma so hard and so fast with these insane pulsed densities that it has absolutely no choice but to fuse. And right there, that is the key. Tuck's high-density brute force method, it established the fundamental physics. It proved you could get to fusion through just immense, rapid compression. This idea of raw, unstoppable power, that is the bedrock that the modern orb engine is built on. Without Tuck's pinch, you just don't get the kind of power we're talking about. Okay, so while Tuck is in the lab mastering brute force, another genius is having this moment of pure, almost prophetic vision. This is Nicholas C. Christofilos. He's a physicist working on the top-secret Project Sherwood, and he dreamed up the perfect plasma trap years, and I mean years, before anyone could even think about building it. Just think about that for a second. It's 1953. He's not building a machine. He's building an idea in his head. He imagines a perfect magnetic bottle. A way to hold plasma that is so perfect it basically contains itself. It was a total leap of theory, so far ahead of its time it was almost science fiction. And the elegance of his idea, the Ostron E layer, it's just incredible. Here's how it works. First, you inject this powerful ring of electrons into a magnetic field. Now that ring creates its own magnetic field, a field so strong it actually pushes back against the external one and flips it around. The field lines literally fold back on themselves, creating this closed, self-contained magnetic bubble, a perfect bottle. And what Christofilos had just imagined way back in 1953 was the first ever concept of a compact torus. And that specific shape, that self-contained geometry, it is the exact blueprint for the field-reversed configuration at the heart of the propulsion system that would show up decades later. The man basically wrote a prophecy using physics. All right, so now we've got the two main ingredients, right? We have Tuck's raw power and Christofilos' perfect shape. Now we get to the moment where they slam into each other. We're in the late 1950s, back in the labs with Tuck's theta pinch machines, and something totally unexpected is about to happen. A world-changing accident. So the scene is set. These researchers, they're pushing the theta pinch to its absolute limits. They're cranking up these massive magnetic fields, making these incredibly dense plasmas. And then they see it. In the data, there's a signature they just can't explain. Something is forming inside the machine that has no business being there. It's stable, it's holding itself together, and it wasn't part of their experiment at all. The discovery was just stunning. A perfectly stable, self-organizing little donut of plasma had simply appeared out of the chaos. This was the field reverse configuration, or FRC. It wasn't designed, it wasn't built, It was discovered, born by total accident out of the raw power of Tuck's machine. So how does a miracle like this even happen? Well, the physics behind it are just as dramatic. It's a process called magnetic reconnection. See, when they used a reversed magnetic field, the field lines got all twisted up. Then they violently broke and snapped back together into a new, much simpler shape. And that process spontaneously created the perfect, closed magnetic bottle that Christofilos had dreamed of. This was proof that the FRC wasn't just some weird fluke. It was a natural, preferred, low-energy state. Nature wants to make this shape. So this accidental discovery, it kicks off a golden age of research. Formal programs get launched at Los Alamos. You've got FRXA and FRXB, all designed to study this little miracle. And what these pioneers found? Well, it was about to break everything they thought they knew about physics. What they found was a shocking disconnect between theory and reality. I mean, the established physics of the time, MHD theory, it predicted that the FRC should have been violently unstable, that its bad curvature should have made it tear itself apart in about 1 single microsecond. But in the lab, they were watching it stay stable for up to 60 microseconds. It was completely and totally impossible. Let that number sink in. This thing wasn't just a little more stable. It was up to 100 times more stable than anything their physics books said was possible. This wasn't just an anomaly, it was a revolution. It meant the old theories were fundamentally wrong. So the breakthrough was figuring out why. This impossible stability was because of something called kinetic effects. Basically, the big loopy orbits of the ions were creating this kind of gyroscopic effect that stabilized the whole thing, something the simple theories just couldn't account for. It was a fundamental discovery. But they also found its Achilles heel. Every single time, this beautiful period of stability ended with the same destructive wobble, a rotational instability that spun it apart like an unbalanced tire. That was the final boss they had to beat. And this is where the story takes a very dark turn. This golden age of open academic science, which held the promise of clean fusion energy for the whole world, was about to come to a sudden end. The knowledge was about to get snatched up, and the secret was about to become a weapon. This quote here from a major review by Los Alamos expert M. Tushevsky, it's like reading the final public chapter of this story. He's summarizing everything they learned, how to make it, how to hold it, and that surprisingly good stability. He basically put a bow on all this incredible knowledge for the world, right before it vanished. So let's just take a second to appreciate this incredible chain of genius. You've got Tuck's brute force power, you've got Christofilos' perfect theoretical shape, and you have the Lionel pioneers discovering this impossible stability. Each piece built perfectly on the last, creating a complete roadmap to compact, high-density plasma. The puzzle was basically solved. So what happened? How did we lose it? Well, this priceless scientific discovery, a potential key to clean energy for the entire planet, was just abandoned. Shifts in public funding meant the research got orphaned. It was just left on a shelf, creating the perfect opportunity for someone to come along and take it. And that is exactly what happened. The research went straight from open public science into a top-secret classified program at Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works. The world-changing genius of these pioneers wasn't for humanity anymore. It was for a weapon. And that brings us to the final, and frankly, the most disturbing question. How could this happen? How could this incredible history of genius and accidental miracles, a story of science that solved the fundamental challenges of fusion stability, how does that end not with clean energy for the world, but as a weaponized secret? A secret we only get these terrifying little glimpses of in things like the MH370 orb video during Operation MH370. It makes you wonder, what else is still hidden?